And recording. All right. I am DJ York. I'm the talk show host of DJ Talks. I don't gossip, but I do talk a lot. And right now I have a very special guest. He was a Secret Service member, and if I'm correct, he was stationed at the Oval Office right in front of it, correct?
That's correct.
Under Bill Clinton and a little bit for George Bush Sr., right?
Correct.
And George Bush Sr. This is Gary Burns. He has wrote a book called The Secrets of Secret Service, and he also did a tell-all, The Crisis of Character, Exposing the Clintons, which I'm sure we all would love to read that book. Is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Byrne, or anything about your background?
Well, thank you for having me on. First of all, so basically, I struggled through school when I was a young guy. I went in the Air Force as a security policeman, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I saw this advertisement for the Secret Service Uniform Division in the newspaper in 1987. It took me 2.5 years to get through the background check and polygraph tests and urine tests and swear on my mother's life. And so eventually I got into the Secret Service Uniform Division. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I was so grateful to be there. And I swear that the day they swore me in, I still felt like they had made a mistake, but I was so grateful to be there and I loved it. I got, when you first get to when we graduated my class, we were a class of 24. Half of us went to the Foreign Missions Branch. The Secret Service Uniform Division in Washington, D.C. also protects the embassies of foreign countries and their chanceries, and which is where they work, and then in some cases where they live. And these places are spread out through Washington, D.C. proper, Maryland, and Virginia. And so I went to the White House. That's where I wanted to go. I'd been a cop in the Air Force. I had sort of been connected with the Secret Service when I was in the Air Force one time when they were at Langley Air Force Base where I was stationed. So anyway, I loved it. My first job there. So when you first get there, there's jobs you can apply for, like to be in addition to the training you've already had. You could apply to work in the computer center. You could apply for training for the bomb truck. And there was about 5 or 6 others, and the only one I got accepted for was the bomb truck. So, which sounds kind of good, except for you have to realize what it is. It's a big old pickup truck, brand new, with this giant trailer on the back with this big steel bubble that, in the case that we found an explosive device at the White House, that we would put it in there, and then I would drive the bomb truck to the parking lot of the old RFK, the old football stadium in Washington, and then. If I got there and it didn't explode, then bomb technicians would deal with it. And so that was my first position outside of the training for. And basically, what you're trained to do is ensure 100% that everybody that comes in and goes out of the White House complex is supposed to be there, and that you're protecting the uniform division of the Secret Service does the metal detectors, the entry control for the White House. They do the K9 bomb sniffing dogs. They have a crime scene technician team. They do the counter snipers, which became very famous the other day when somebody tried to assassinate President Trump. They have I think I said bomb sniffing dogs. And they're at the vice president's residence, and then they travel all over the world with the president and other people that the Secret Service protects to do the metal detectors and do the advances and all that kind of stuff. So I loved it. I loved everything about it. The next position I got trained for was the Oval Office. And at the time, in the early 1990s, George H.W. Bush, or I referred to him as Papa Bush, was president. And so I got trained to work outside his Oval Office. And then right around the time Bill Clinton, just after Bill Clinton, it was clear that Bill Clinton had won the election. I got assigned there permanently, and then things changed a little bit. The Bush family or the Clinton family was different than the Bush family, but I liked what I did. I liked working outside the Oval Office. You saw the whole world. The people revolve around the U.S. and the American government and the president of the United States, and I was standing right outside the Oval Office, and I loved it. And I didn't really see any problems with it until, after a short period of time when Bill Clinton started working there, that I noticed he had a lot of women hanging around that, didn't necessarily look like they were doing anything. And so you're a little young to know all the details. And I mean, unless you've read the book or but I mean, you probably weren't born when this was happening. And yeah, so what year were you born?
I was born in 2005.
Yeah,
But my
right.
last school project I ever did, because my mom passed away my senior
Oh, I'm
year. So the
sorry.
last project I did was the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky scandal, because our teacher told us to. So I
Yeah,
dug deep into it, and I went. I was just, I was probably a little bit biased. No, I was completely biased. I'm not even gonna lie. I was completely
yeah,
biased, but it was great. I loved it. So.
yeah. So so to be sort of humorous, there I was. So I kind of knew what. So before Bill Clinton wins the election, I'm on a detail with George H.W. Bush. The election hasn't happened yet, but it's getting close, or maybe it's during the election. I'm sorry, but Bill Clinton hasn't won yet, and I'm with Papa Bush on a detail on the edge of Arkansas and Tennessee, and we're at some restaurant. And the funny thing is we're in this area. It was Memphis, right? I think it was Memphis, Tennessee, and we're in this area where about a year and a half, almost 2 years later, I was there again, the same street and the same restaurant with Bill Clinton. But anyway, I'm there with George H.W. Bush, and it's like 1991. It's in the summer. It's hotter than Atlanta, or I should say, hotter than Charlotte in August. And so anyway, it's at night, and George H.W. Bush, the president, is having dinner in this barbecue restaurant with some local people and friends. And the building's all glass. We have the roads all cordoned off for blocks. And I'm standing on a post right across from the restaurant on the corner, controlling pedestrian traffic. The vehicle traffic has already stopped a couple blocks away. And I'm just trying to draw a picture of what, to do the type of protection that the Secret Service does, not what happened with President Trump the other day was a disaster, and there were some mistakes. But normally when things go right, traffic's blocked off a couple blocks away. So I'm standing there, and I'm posted with this local deputy sheriff, and then there's an agent there who's sort of in the middle of the street, and he's got a vehicle to sit in, and I didn't have a vehicle to sit in. So the deputy said to me, "Why don't you, after about 5 hours, I felt like I was going to fall over." He said, "Why don't you sit in the vehicle?" And so I did. And while I was sitting there, I started reading the paper, and it was a local paper, and it was talking about who this. I didn't know who Bill Clinton was, and all these scandals about him, and rumors of drug running, and rumors of women, and his brother and him doing drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was like, "There's no way." I was very naive at the time. I didn't really in politics too much, and I just thought everybody was as honest. I don't want to say as honest as I was, but as honest as the people that I worked with, who
Right.
also passed the polygraph test, and the people in my life, my family, and so anyway, I was wrong. so so
Now, Bush Senior, was he a pretty honest person? Would you
yeah,
say that?
yeah. Listen, I'm not saying some of my opinions of them may have changed over the years, but I'm gonna tell you something. They're nice people. They're good. They were a good family, and they were good to us. And
Right.
they were so easy to protect, and they were so kind that it almost set you up for kind of a train wreck later on, because you expected everybody to be like that, and they weren't, right? So there I am, and I get out of the car, and I'm talking to the deputy, and I said, "Hey, who's this Bill Clinton? Is this your boy?" I said, "There's no way this guy's going to get elected." He said, "Let me tell you something, Gary." He looked at me, serious as a heart attack. He said, "Let me tell you something, Gary." He goes, "My daddy grew up with Bill Clinton's mother. Believe everything you see." He said, "The crazier it is, the truer it is." He said, "I'm telling you, these people are Satan." And he actually used that word. He goes, no matter how much trouble they're in, they can spin manure. They can spin shit in the gold. And I laughed, and I said, "Okay." And then, time went by, and George H.W. Bush lost the election, and Bill Clinton became president. And then I was on one of the first details to go to Arkansas while he was still the sitting governor, but was the electee, right? He was going to become president. And just real quickly, like things started coming, like I was like, "Oh, this guy knew what he was talking about." And it was just so bizarre. But also too, to give your your listeners an idea of what it's like to be, 99% of what people know about the Secret Service, and I'll probably say this again when we're talking about what happened to President Trump. 99% of what people know is fiction. It's from movies, it's from TV. It's, you want to believe it's like, this that everybody is perfect and honest, and people don't make mistakes and then try to hide them, and that's not what reality is. And so,
Right.
but anyway, so time goes by and Bill Clinton takes office, and I'm assigned outside the Oval Office, and I like it. It's nice, his staff, most of them are all right, and there's always run-ins. It doesn't matter who's in the office. The job of the uniform division officer outside the Oval Office is to tell everybody no. That's my job. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, you can't. And the uniform division maintains posts around the White House and the complex 24/7, where the agents just move kind of with the protective with the president.
Right.
When the president's not in the Oval Office, it's just the uniform division officer, and he's got a lot of responsibilities. You got to check and make sure everything's turned off. You have to look for classified information that might be left out, and if you find classified information on your post out in the hallway, there's a box. It looks like a piece of furniture. It actually is a piece of furniture, but it's also got alarms in it. And in the bottom of it is a gun box with a submachine gun and a short shotgun and ammunition for all those, and ammunition for your pistol. And so anyway, it's like a fighting post, right? And
Right.
so, and then also, if you find classified information left out, it's no big deal. That's one of the reasons you're there. When you work outside the Oval Office, your clearance is actually code word above top secret, and you just pick it up. You don't look at it. You close it. You stick it in that safe, and then when you see the president's secretary or his staff or something that handles that information, you just say, "Hey, I've got that folder. Do you want it now or whatever?" And so that was the sort of the main job. And the Oval Office includes the cabinet room to the left. Like if you're standing in front of the Oval Office door, you all probably seen pictures of it, or you could look it up. You're standing in front of the outer door that's curved. To your left is the cabinet room, and then the Oval Office, and then just behind it is a small bathroom, a study, and a small dining room, and then even a smaller little like kitchenette that the Navy steward prepares food, lunch, and stuff during the day for the president. The Navy has a mess, which is a fancy word for a kitchen underneath the West Wing on the ground floor, and they take care of the president's food needs during the day. And so anyway.
How much does the sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
How much does the president actually stay at the White House? Is it that often or not much?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah, that's where they live. They have other houses and stuff. Joe Biden spends a lot of time. President Biden spends a lot of time in Delaware at his beach house, but they go to Camp David, but they live at the White House. I mean, I promise you, I've done escorts into their private living quarters and stuff. They live there. They don't have to do anything. They have a staff that does everything, cleans, even to the point where some of the first families, like, they actually go to the staff and say, "Hey, listen, I can't deal with not doing anything. So I need to clean, or I need to do something, or I want to be involved in something." And so, but anyway,
Right.
so I'm working outside the Oval Office, and then, so not too long after that, one day this young intern shows up. Her name's Monica Lewinsky, and as soon as I see her, I know she's not supposed to be there, because she has a temporary intern's pass for the old executive office building across the West Exec. And I stop her and I go, "You're not supposed to be here. Leave." And she's like, "No, I'm here to see Betty." I said, "You're an intern. Get out." So the first time I saw her, she turned around and she left. And then, excuse me just for a second.
No, you're fine.
So she turned around and left. And so a couple days later, I'm working, and in the meantime, like every time somebody pushes you off post. So when you work outside the Oval Office back then, you're two people. It was my post, and then I had an assistant, another officer who stood the post. And so when we would push each other off and go on break, we would fill each other in. So I'd fill them in, and he said, "Yeah, I saw her the other day, and So it didn't take long for all of us to get together, the 3 different shifts, and say, hey, who's this Monica Lewinsky? She's a pain in the ass. And then, so then one day she showed up and she said, Betty's expecting me. And I said, listen, I've already told you you're not supposed to be here. Who do you work for? So in the meantime, Betty Curry came out and said that she was looking for. Hey, let me stop this for a minute. I'll be right with you.
You're fine. You're fine.
Hey, can I call you back? Thanks. So, so anyway, so Betty comes out and says, hey, she's coming over. And I go, so I went in, after she left, I went in and I said to Betty, and next to Betty's desk was, in this little closet, was Nancy Hernreich, who was the president's assistant from Arkansas. And so anyway, I said, hey, if this woman's going to be coming over here, she needs to get another pass. She's not supposed to be, so I called the officer downstairs who keeps letting her in. I said, hey, stop letting her in. She's not supposed to be over here. He goes, well, she says her boss, I got like, she's full of crap, And I just assumed she was somebody who wanted to climb the ladder, right? She's an intern. She comes from her father was a doctor in Beverly Hills. Literally, she lived in 902-1810, whatever the area code was, in Beverly Hills. And her dad was a doctor. And she literally said to me one day when we were bantering about where she was, where she was allowed to go, she said, I'm not used to hearing the word no. And I said, well, you're in the right place because you're going to hear a lot here. And so, but what I didn't realize was, it took me a little while to figure it out. She was befriending people that would get her access to the president. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know what her initial motivation was, whether it was just climbing the ladder. But later on, years later, when the story broke and there was all this testimony and the FBI was going to arrest her, and they interviewed some of her friends, and some of her friends from high school said that the Bill Clinton was probably her 3rd, 4th, or 5th married relationship. Like, it's not the first time. Right. So anyway.
And now she's playing victim now a lot.
Oh,
too.
Yes. And of course she is, because that's what they all do. Right. Oh,
right. It's
not my fault. And actually, I'll tell you, remember that, what you just said, that she plays victim, and I'll fill that in a minute. So, she's coming and going, and it's getting cumbersome, but life goes on. There's other things going on. And so then they give her an intern pass, and we get a memo that says that certain interns, there's a list of interns that are going to have a hard old executive office pass, but are going to be allowed to come into the West Wing to bring their bosses lunch or information when they're working in the Roosevelt room with the staff. Okay, what do we care? That's not, our job's not to tell the Clinton staff how to work. Our job's, we don't want them coming over with those passes, but it's a list of people. They have the picture of their pass and their name, and she's on this. And so then there's the first government shutdown, and while there's this government shutdown, nobody's allowed. So the government shut down, nobody's getting paid. So one of the things, here's 2 things your listeners need to know about the Secret Service. One, you get paid no matter what. There's a legal, I'll use the word legal because I'm going to use the word slush one. The Treasury Department, years ago, Congress wrote a bill. The Treasury Department has a fund that will continuously pay the Secret Service no matter what. 2, you're exempt from the draft. Now, not that anybody would avoid the draft, but if you're in the Secret Service as an agent or an officer, you're already protecting the continuity of the U.S. government, right? You're already protecting the flag.
Right.
And back when I was in there, they didn't even want you to be in the reserves or anything like that. Now it's changed since then. They've loosened it up a little bit. But so if there was a draft and you got drafted, and you're a 25-year-old working at the White House, you're already doing your duty. Now, if you want to go, that's something different that you'll have to take up at the time. But so anyway, so where was I? So Monica is, life goes on, and the shutdown. So nobody's in there. The law says during a shutdown, the chief of staff can come in, his assistant, and then he can have 2 unpaid interns. And one of them ends up being Monica Lewinsky. And so later, like, I don't know what day it was of the shutdown. So I worked the shutdown a lot. I was working. Listen, when the government shuts down, if you're in the Secret Service working in the West Wing, you love it because nobody's coming in. And all these people with all these attitudes of, they were so important in the world that the United States will fall off the map if they don't come in every day. You should have seen these people when we had to refuse them entry. It was comical. They're out there rattling the gates, crying, I have to get in. So, and the shutdown went on. One of them went on for like over a week, and it just shows you how useless most of the government is. So anyway, so one night I'm working the evenings. I probably worked a 12-hour shift. We did a lot of that anyway. So the interns and the staff that are working together, and they're helping facilitate for the chief of staff meetings with the members of Congress to try to come to an agreement to stop this shutdown, right?
Right.
And it's Gingrich. Newt Gingrich is the speaker, and I forget everybody's name, but they were all the nicest guys, and there was a couple of them that were kind of dicks, but I'll leave, unless you really want to know who they are, and I'll leave their names out, but most of them are really funny, and they really enjoyed like being there, and they get to see the other side. They know what protection is at the Capitol and what goes on there, and then they get to see what's happening in the West Wing. And like one time, this senator, I can't remember his name right now, but he's sort of famous in a couple of reasons. He was an actor. He was a senator from Tennessee, and he was an actor, and he was a lawyer. And he's been in movies, and old movies, and you've probably seen him. His name will come to me in a minute. But anyway, he was there, right? And he walks up to me, and he's like, hey, I need to use this phone. And I go, you can't. And he goes, excuse me? I go, Senator, you can't use that phone. It's part of the alarm system. It's part of my communication system. There's a phone over there. There's 2 phones in the Roosevelt room. He goes, well, people are all news already. And I said, all right, I'm going to tell you a little secret, Senator. So his staff member, his chief of staff standing next to him. I said, neither of you breathe a word of this. I said, walk down that hallway. I said, you see that agent? Walk up to him, ask him to step to the left. When he steps to the left, put your hand on the wall and pull it back, and that panel will pop open, and there's a phone in there. So they walk down there. The agent steps to the side. He pushes the panel. It pops open, and there's an old phone in there. And he's like, he looks at me. He goes, "There's a phone."
That's
so
awesome.
He makes this call, and so later on he comes back up. He goes, "Am I allowed to use that phone again?" I go, "As long as the agent doesn't shoot you, yeah, it's fine." So because technically that's his phone, but So anyway, so the shutdown's going on. So one night, the Republicans leave. It's like 7, 8 at night. Nobody's eating, so they order a bunch of pizza from Domino's. So Domino's shows up. It's not unusual. They bring the pizza in, and Monica Lewinsky walks by my post with 2 big paper plates full of pizza. She walks into the secretary's office, so I follow her in. And she says to Betty Carey, "I brought the president pizza." And I said, "No, you didn't." And Betty looked at me. I go, "I don't know where this pizza came from. Nobody does." And the agent walked in behind me, and I go, "She's trying to give her pizza from who knows where." And Bill Clinton comes walking out, and he's like, "Oh, is that my pizza?" I'm like, "Oh, shit, here we go." So I looked at the agent, and I said, "This is on you. Goodbye." And I walked out into the hallway. So they ate pizza standing there together. He walked into the Roosevelt room where all the interns were. He thanked them. So anyway, that's sort of the beginning of their, relationship, so to speak. Not that she hadn't been a pain in the butt before then. And then shortly after that, like I ignored the rumors. There were rumors like shortly after that, she was actually, and again, yeah, to kind of frame it up for everybody, at that time, the Clintons had about 250 interns working in the complex, or maybe 200, somewhere between 200 250. Nobody could name me another one. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
her behavior was not normal intern behavior. And then all of a sudden one day, one of the agents, she comes up and starts talking to one of the agents, and it was clear that she was on a trip with the president, like with his staff. I'm like, why is an intern traveling with this guy? That's not normal. But again, it's not my job is Secret Service.
Take the Oval Office.
Right, the Oval Office, Secret Service, bang bang, handgun. That's my gig. So anyway, so not too long after that, I'm staying on a Saturday. So I'm working on a Saturday, and I get a message that Bill Clinton's going to come over to the Oval Office. So when he comes over and it's off the schedule, the staff, his assistant Nancy and the secretary Betty, had a system set up at the Navy Steward that, and me or anybody who was working at our post, if he showed up, to call them, call one of them, and the other ones were like a phone tree, because he's over there working by himself, and so he comes over one day and my phone rings, and it's the Navy Steward, and he says, "Hey, I just got a phone call from Nancy that Bill Clinton's coming over, the president's coming over." He probably said POTUS or whatever, Eagle, and that was his call sign. And he said, I'm on my way in. And I said, okay. So Bill Clinton comes over, and the way he used to come over, he'd come over from the mansion, he'd go down the West Colonnade, and then he would come to the Oval Office on the outside. And so the routine is that when you hear him coming over the radio, the uniformed division officer takes down so when the president's not there, the Oval Office door is open, and there's a rope, blue rope that goes across it to keep people out, like that, you're not supposed to go past that rope. And that's where my post is. So president's coming. I usually wait till when they say, usually when you hear them say the elevator's moving, the elevator's moving up to bring them down, right? Mm-hmm. So I hear the elevator's moving. I take the rope down. I walk over across the Oval Office seal. I never walked on it. I either jumped over it when I had to, or I walked around it. So I walk around it, and I just thought it was sacred. It's the seal of the United States. You're standing in the place where the most powerful man in the world works, and I just anyway. So I go over, and the door is curved, and it's glass, and it's heavy, and the glass in it is bullet resistant. And one of the things you don't ever want to get caught up doing is don't refer to stuff as bulletproof. Nothing's bulletproof. Everything deteriorates with each impact of a projectile. Right. That's the bottom line. Anyway, this stuff is bullet resistant, and so but the latch is goofy, right? You open it's an old doorknob that's got a modern mechanism in it, and so I open it up, and you can push it halfway open, and that way when the agent comes, it's open for the agent, because it's locked. It's always locked. You can't unlock it unless you put a key in it and turn it, and then as soon as you pull the key out, it's locked again. And then it's also on an electric lock, and so anyway, so they I push the door open, and as they come up, I just swing the door open for the agent, and I walk back to the middle of the room. And traditionally, the officer would stop, face the president, and say, "Hello, sir," or "Good morning," or "Good afternoon," or normally I would say, "Hello, Mr. President, how are you?" And he was always very polite. They all were very polite, even if they had stuff on their mind. Sometimes they got your name right. Sometimes they just called you young man. Sometimes they called you officer. Whatever. And then you walked over to the door on your post, and then you waited for the agent to come out. And the agent would look around, and the agent knows you've already that the suite is secure, but they still have a job to do, and they're not looking around because they don't think I don't know what I'm doing, but they're just looking around because they're supposed to. He looks around, does a quick sweep, walks over to me, nods at me. He walks out. I pull the door closed. We stand post outside, right? So Bill Clinton's there about 15 minutes, and here comes Monica Lewinsky down the hallway. And she's got this big thing of paper in her hand. Now, it's probably not done like this because of all the modern technology now, but it used to be that overnight there's a group of people at the White House who take all the lead stories from the newspapers. The big newspapers would send them to the White House press office. They would make copies of them, and then they'd put them together. It was called the press release. And you would flip through it, and it wasn't like the whole story. It was just the headlines. Fire in Chicago. New York police officer died. You know what I mean? Like, it was the headline.
Yeah.
And it was pretty thick, and had this giant staple driven through it. So here she comes with that. She goes, "Oh, I was directed to deliver this to the president." And I'm like, "We get 3 of them. Get out of here. Go. We get 3 of them. You're not supposed to be here." So as she's walking away, the agent looks at me and he goes, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "I know what my job is. What are you talking about?" He goes, "Dude, they've been hooking up." And I'm like, "I don't believe that shit." He goes, "Gary, I go out on the road with this guy." So I'm like, "Oh, well, all right, whatever." So about 5 minutes later, the Oval Office door opens up and there's Bill Clinton. He says, "Hey, young man, there's going to be an intern delivering something to me. Could you make sure let me know when she gets here?" I was like, "Yes, sir, sure." He closes the door. I looked at the agent and I go, "Wow, okay, whatever." So,
But you really stood in the middle of it for a while, though.
what was
Kind of
that?
stopped her. You kind of stopped her from getting
Well,
in there a good couple times.
I got her removed eventually. And then,
Really?
yeah, so I'll try to speed this up a little. So she comes back that time. She walks up. I go, "Okay, you win." So, but here's what most people missed, and here's what became one of the pivotal things during Bill Clinton's impeachment in the grand jury, and it's why my name rose to the top, because I was at the Oval Office so much, and everybody who told a story about her, they like to say I was there or whatever, and I didn't see everything, but I did see this, and here's the thing most people miss: how did Bill Clinton know that I turned her away? I turned her away. How did he know? She had his private number.
Had to, yeah.
She had a phone number that was on the back for a phone on the back table. That's the phone that some of the cabinet members can call him directly on. His family can call him directly on. The Secretary of Transportation can't call him on it. Department of Defense can, CIA director, chiefs of staffs. And when you call this number, when you dial it from a phone, there's a code you have to dial. You dial the number, and there's a code you have to dial. And you have to dial in a rhythm. And there's a song, I won't tell you what it is, because it might still work this way. There's a song, I used to, when I would dial it to test it, because you had to test it every once in a while, and the communications people would call you and ask you to help them test it. And I would sing this song in my head as I dialed the code. And then it would let you in, and then, So that's the only way she could have, because the White House operators would have never put an intern through to Bill Clinton.
Right.
So after she left that day, I figured that out, and I'm like, "Oh, this is going to blow up in our face one day." And then all the story. And then there was a bunch of instances where they got caught, different things. And then the couple things that I was involved in was one day I came on post, and the Navy steward was Nelvis Biani, and he had Monica had just left, and he was in there in the study cleaning up. President went back over to the mansion, and apparently they've been having some kind of sex, because there were hand towels with semen in it. And Nelvis is a friggin' sailor. He knows he's a man, and he comes out and he's cussing in Filipino and cussing at me in English. And I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "I'm tired. This is demeaning. I'm a chief in the Navy." And I go, "What's wrong, buddy?" And he told me, and it's not the first time we had seen this, and I'd seen it with the other stewards, and there was tissues before. And so I grabbed the trash bag, and I told Nelvis to throw the towels in there, because I knew the process. Those towels go downstairs, and the young sailors that work down there in the mess wash them. And they know I was trying to squash more rumors about the president. So I took the towels, and then later on, I put them in my gym bag, and then later on, I threw them in a dumpster on the other side of the complex.
Have you ever regretted that?
Oh, yeah, because guess what it looks like later on?
Looks like you threw away evidence.
I destroyed evidence, which meant nothing to me for 3 years. And then 3 years later, when the story breaks, wow, dude, I was pretty sure for a while there, if the Secret Service didn't run me over with a cement mixer, that I was going to die in a one-car Arkansas suicide. So that's what they used to call it.
Wow.
That's what the troopers in Arkansas would call it. So anyway.
Now we have about 10 more minutes, 'cause I got another interview to hit with
go ahead.
an individual that was with
How much time do you have?
10 feet away from Trump, about 10 more minutes.
Go ahead. What
So
do you
I'm
want
going
to
to
know?
ask you one more question
Go ahead.
about the Clintons, and we'll go on to Trump.
Sure.
And if you want to hear anything else about Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton, buy his book, Crisis of Character. There will be a link in the description to purchase that book. And my last question is, once you release this book, when it came out, after the scandal, has Bill Clinton ever tried to contact you?
No, no, no. And I knew they wouldn't, because in some ways they're relieved. Once they got a copy of the book, and they saw what wasn't in it. So there was no confidentiality agreements at the time. My only thing is I had signed a document saying I would never release any classified information, which is not really a problem, right?
Right.
And, but there were staff members that worked for the Clintons that were jerks, assholes. But 20 some years later, do I need to, take a crap on them? I don't. There was people in the Secret Service executives who were having affairs of their own with Clinton staff members. And I approached it, and I felt like I had to tell the story, but I left their names out. They know who they are. And if you were there when I was there in the Secret Service, you knew who I was talking about, but I softened it up a little bit. It's all factual, but I didn't name them. I didn't name their position exactly. I just referred to them as an executive or a senior person in the Secret Service, because I'm not trying to, it's not that I disagreed with the way they behaved, but I'm nobody's moral compass. And 20 years later, do I want to destroy their life? I don't want to be responsible. That's not that. The reason I wrote that book was so the American people could get a dose of who Hillary Clinton really was. Vote for her, don't vote for her, I don't care. If you can't at least listen to what happened to the person, Bill Clinton's got his version, Monica's got his version. I'm telling you what really happened. And if you don't want to at least hear the narrative from a guy who took a polygraph test to get where he was, and nobody ever questioned my integrity or my honesty, never, until I wrote the first book. If you just don't want to hear that, then you want to stay in your own narrative, and that's fine. That's your freedom of choice. Have a good life. So that's why I wrote the book.
All right. Well, that book will be in the description. I'll leave the Amazon link, and you have a website too that I can link.
Yeah, it's official Gary J. Byrne.
And I'll link that down there too. So if you want to buy the book and Secrets of the Secret Service, it'll also be down there.
You can find I have a YouTube channel too. Just put my name in there.
Yes, sir. So all the links will be down in the link in the description of this video. The major thing.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's attempted assassination.
Yeah. So
where were you?
Turned his head. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Where were you when you found out? Did you think that this could happen in 2024? Because if I'm correct, don't quote me on it. I love history. But the last attempted assassination on a U.S. president was 1981, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So actually, somebody tried to kill Bill Clinton in the Philippines.
Oh.
I talk about it in this book. I had forgotten about it. I won't go into the whole story because it takes up. But Bill Clinton was in the Philippines. The head of his detail, who later became the director, was Lou Marletti. He was a former Green Beret and had worked his way up the Secret Service chain. And he changed the route that they were taking to an off-the-record thing. And because he did, he saved Bill Clinton's life. They found a bomb on the route it was 25 pounds of Simtex that would have destroyed the whole motorcade, killed them all.
Man.
Yeah. So not many people know about that, but I talk about it in this book, and I also tell you what book I found that in. So anyway, so okay, for the sake of the conversation, you're right about Reagan and so, but a lot of the things that went wrong with Reagan, some of them went wrong with when President Trump was attacked the other day, and also there were some similarities with John F. Kennedy back in 1963. And what I'm telling you is the Secret Service, it's hard to get them to change, and they say all these things. I talk about this in the second book. Is in 1993, Congress tried to open up, or early 90s, they tried to open up an investigation to look at something about the Kennedy assassination. And when they went to the Secret Service to get the records, the Secret Service told them they had destroyed all the records. Well, that's against the law, and nobody was held accountable for it. and they destroyed who was in the motorcade. They destroyed all the information because they have some culpability of things they should have and shouldn't have done. And then after the Kennedy assassination, there was about 20 suggestions that a panel made for security. When Reagan got shot, one of those suggestions that they never implemented was securing the press. So the Secret Service were nice people, we're good people. We want to do a good job when we get there. It's an important job, but it is just another government agency that has all the problems of the IRS and the Postal Service. It's got so many levels of bloated management. I'm telling you, you will never find out really what happened to President Trump, or almost happened to President Trump. You won't. They won't. They're not going to tell the truth. They're not going to tell Congress. They don't care if you subpoena them, because nobody ever gets in trouble. Nobody. They don't care. They're going to hide their little secrets. They're going to hide the fact that they were so undermanned. And I talked about it in both books. The Uniform Division and the Secret Service, if the Secret Service has a job to do and it takes 100 people, they send 60. And they just work those 60 into the ground. And they've always done that. And that's why people started in the early 90s, when I first got there in 1991, nobody left that job. Hardly any agents, hardly any Uniform Division people. After 9/11, 300 Uniform Division people transferred from the Uniform Division to the Air Marshal program. That's what I did. In the first 8 months, they lost 300 Uniform Division officers in 8 months. They lost their minds. They were so panicked because for years they've been telling us, if you're that unhappy, maybe this isn't the place for you. So people left. Now, as far as President Trump, the mistakes, the things you see when, he gets shot at, he gets hit in the ear, he goes down, everybody piles on top of him. That's good. It's called shielding in place. They're shielding him in place. They all jump on top of him. Keep in mind again that 90% of what most people know about the Secret Service is from movies and TV. Not everybody's 6.5 feet tall. There are women in the Secret Service. Everybody does a pretty good job there. If that was a training scenario, it would have been fine. You know what I mean? Like they sheltered them in place. They protected them. You can hear, because somebody had a microphone on, you can hear transmissions, and they're waiting. The sack of the head of the detail says, what's the status? What's the status? And you hear him say, shoot her down. So they know the shooter's been shot. So now they have to get to the car, because the Suburban, because the Suburban is armored and it's very bullet resistant. It's bullet resistant. It's explosive resistant to a certain extent. So they got to get to the car, and that's one of the most dangerous times, because now you're taking that human shield off them, and you got to move them. And Donald Trump is a big dude. He's 6'3". Yeah. And so they start moving, and there's some problems. His shoes came off. They're trying to get that, and the whole time, from the time they get on top of him to the time they get into the car, they are checking his body, because we all know what happened with Reagan. It's drilled into us. Ronald Reagan kept saying he was fine. And then he would turn inside the car. He turned to Jerry Parr and said, Jerry Parr shoved his hands inside Reagan's jacket, checked him, pulled his hands out, no blood, because the bullet that had gone underneath Reagan's arm had hit the open door and flattened to the size of a dime. And it went through his armpit like a razor. And when he put his arm down, it was just like no blood came out. So they're in the car, and I'll switch back to, but this is important. They're in the car, and Jerry Parr tells them to go to the White House, because that's where everybody's waiting, right? The Uniform Division's there. It's a fortress. It's, as close as you get to a fortress. It's protected. So Reagan turns to Parr and says, Jerry, you broke my ribs when you pushed me in the car. And Parr turns to him on the seat, looks right at him, and he says, Mr. President, how do you feel? And he goes, I'm fine, Jerry, but you broke my ribs. And when he says it again, he sees a spot of blood on his lip. And he says, Mr. President, how do you feel? And he repeats what he said, and then there's 2 spots of blood. So now Jerry knows there's a major problem. So Jerry yells to the driver, GW, immediately. The driver knows from the pitch of Jerry's voice that they have to get in front of a doctor now. He swings that giant limousine around like nobody's business, and they start back to the hospital. The follow-up limo that's chasing them sees what happens. They run them down till they get to the hospital. Reagan was literally bleeding out in the car. That's why they're checking Donald Trump. head, neck. Okay, his ear's bleeding, no big deal. It didn't pierce the skull, neck, under the arms, under the arms, under the arms, nothing. Ribs. You know, they even probably patted his groin down and his rectum, you know, his butt, excuse me, you know, and looked him over. And, you know, it happened pretty fast. So they're moving fast. He's listening to radio transmissions. Now they're going to move to the car. The two guys in black are Secret Service agents. They're part of the counter assault team. That's the 6 guys in the Suburban behind the president's car. Their job is to, if they get attacked in the motorcade, is to stay and fight to the death and let the motorcade with the follow-up car and the other agents go. And they're supposed to stay there and just fight it out. And that's their job. But they're also, in this scenario, they're trained to come up and help the detail get the president to the vehicle. So you see them come up. There's a third guy from the local PD, which is fine. He mimics what the counter assault guys are doing, but he's off the stage and he's covering that back part for them, and he's doing a great job. But those people are secured, but still, it's good to have. So they start moving to the car. There's a couple problems, you know, with keeping him close to keep around him. He's tall, you know, but they get to the car. The problem with President Trump is hard to protect. He wants to throw his fist up again. It looks like he steps up on the running board, pops his head up, but they get him in the car, get the door closed, they get moving, and then you can breathe. And what you have to realize is everybody involved in that, the president, the agents, everybody had this massive adrenaline dump. And if you've never had an adrenaline dump, it's tough you got to learn to manage it. Your eyesight goes to a single pinprick. Your hearing goes away. You get that feeling in your throat like there's saliva. You taste blood or copper sometimes. And you got to, you know, when you're trained to do this all the time, and just like in the military, you learn to train past that to the point where some of these people, they don't even get the reaction anymore. They just say, oh shit, and then they move. So anyway, this is what they're dealing with. They get to the car. I don't have a lot of problems with what happened with the car. Although it looks like there's a video out there that shows that it looks like one of the agents dropped their pistol as they were going down the steps, but they retrieved the pistol. I haven't seen the video again. I've only seen it once. I wouldn't talk too much about it till you see it again or you can get the video, but
right.
That is what I saw in this video. And so anyway, the problems were with the counter sniper. First of all, counter sniper wasn't assigned to that event until the day before. They need at least 24 hours to do their surveillances. I don't care how simple the format is. Why that was done, I don't know. But I also know that at least twice, Trump's detail, not President Trump, but when people say President Trump requested more security, President Trump or Mr. Trump doesn't request anything. The head of his detail requested, and it went all the way up to the director, and they denied it. Now that's the question that she needs to answer. Why were you denying these guys protection? You knew what the threats were, and if you didn't, then you do need to resign. I don't necessarily want her to resign. I want her to fix the freaking problems and stop these crazy people butcher our leaders. It's obscene. And some of the rhetoric you've heard about President Trump, people that are making fun of him and stuff, this is the reason the political temperature is so high, because they despise him because he's a good, decent, honest guy. Now, I'm not saying that because I think that's your opinion. I'm telling you that's my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Nobody does. But I'm telling you, nobody knew crap about this guy other than he made a lot of money building giant buildings and he had a TV show. And he was a little crass at times. He was never accused of a parking ticket until he ran for politics. You know, so anyway, that's what happened. The counter sniper guys there was a lot of confusion. They didn't have good communications. They didn't have the response. Each counter sniper team needs at least 2 response people. If you're up on the roof, you got your rifle, you got your binoculars, you see a man behind a minivan, you know, 100 yards away inside your zone, somebody needs to go and look at it. So the response is usually a Secret Service person, a uniformed division officer, or an agent, and 1 local PD guy. They didn't have what they needed. The building that the guy climbed up on was the building that the local PD was using for a break room. He climbed up on their building. Nobody was doing what they were supposed to. The ball was dropped many times by the Secret Service and by the local PD. But but the local PD is not responsible for that protection. The Secret Service says it goes back to the Secret Service. Don't let anybody suggest to you that the PD has a responsibility here. They do what we ask them to do, not what we tell them to do. They do what the Secret Service asks them to do, and they never say no, no matter how much money it costs them. These people have a small budget in these small towns. The Secret Service comes in and we blow their budget out. Their overtime, all their overtime's gone in a weekend because that's how expensive it is. And these people do what we ask because they believe in our country, our constitutional republic. And so anyway, it was a train wreck. You can't blame the individual technicians. There were lots of communications problems. I'm not saying that everything doesn't need to be looked at, but also realize this, and your listeners need to realize your chances of really hearing the truth are slim to none, because there's one thing the Secret Service can do, and that's the Beltway Shuffle, dude. You know, that's what they used to call it, the Beltway Shuffle. And by the time it's over, they'll be blaming some gardener who used to work there. I mean, it's just, you know,
insane.
You will, if you watch these hearings, you're not going to get any answers. So because they've got to protect themselves. The one thing the Secret Service does, it protects the name, the Secret Service. That's their main job. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot to swallow, you know, because the media's saying a lot of things. The individual that I'll have on later today, Lord Willen, has even went out and said, because they were 10 feet away from Trump. They were right next to Trump's photographer.
Yeah.
And the individual claims that there was a second shooter.
So,
firm on it.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. It's very common to hear that. So I would tell you, let them have their say. Remember this, regardless of if they were there and you're sure they were there, it was a traumatic incident for them. Keep that in mind. You know, that adrenaline dump I talked about, see if you can talk about it.
This individual backed out of the interview because of PTSD and like trauma just bothered him so bad.
Oh, I get it. I mean,
we're talking 10 feet away.
Dude, they could hear. I'm going to tell you a little secret. The bullet that hit President Trump's ear, it might not have actually physically touched his ear. There's a thing called ballistic shock. Now, ballistic shock's used in a couple different terminologies. If a bullet goes right by your ear, you've seen it in movies. The movie Black Hawk Down, the guy gets shot at and he goes, "What was that snap?" And that's what it is, that snap. That ballistic shock can trigger the fight or flight mechanism. The bullet didn't actually have to touch his ear. It could have just been, an eighth of an inch away. It still would have split his ear wide open because of the speed that it's going. And that's just ballistics. And, I'm not saying he wasn't hit. I believe he was hit.
No, right.
But I'm saying that, I've seen, I've got quite a bit of experience with firearms and shooting, you name it, I've shot firearms at it. Bricks, chemicals, blocks, cement, armored cars, bags of dirt, bags of shit, bags of wood, or whatever. So I understand. I'm not a ballistician, but I understand quite a bit. And so, but when you're talking to this other person, they've been through a really trying time. Hopefully they'll never have another experience worse than that in their life, because it's terrible. They're there because they like the guy. 99% of everybody there is there because they like him or love him and like what he stands for. And then somebody tried to murder him right in front of them. It's horrendous. Right. So anyway.
Scary, sad that it can still happen in America today.
Yes, sir.
I would think with the technology and things that we have gone through in the past with other presidents, we wouldn't have to experience it again. This is the first in my generation to actually see something like that happen. So let's just hope it don't happen again. Pray the Lord it don't.
Agreed.
But Mr. Byrne, I'm very grateful that you came on. Very happy. This is a great episode for sure. I'm gonna close this out in prayer real quick, and I'll go ahead and dismiss you right after. That sound good?
Sure. Yeah.
Dearly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for what you've done, Lord. I want to thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity, Lord, to do this with Mr. Byrne. God, I pray that you help me, Lord, to release this, Lord, and let it be a help to somebody, God, to see that, some presidents are corrupt, some aren't, Lord, and that we do need the right person in office, Lord, to lead America. But God, I pray that you let us go on about our days, Lord, forgive us our sins, wickedness, or ungodliness, and help us have a good day. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
And I'm DJ Talks, well, DJ York, but with DJ Talk Show, like I said, ain't gospel or backbiting, just telling you the truth. But thank you for listening, and thank you, Mr. Byrne.
You're welcome.